Today's research presentation will be focusing more on the common operation system for all IoT devices, presented to you by me, Mohammed Abdelaziz, as a part of research submission for the NYU University Cybersecurity Master Degree. So, as a start, just generally, what is the IoT? The IoT is the Internet of Things, which is having a different applications from the small meters measurement to even more complicated use cases like medical devices or even smart city. The main problem or the main challenge which is we have for the IoT, it's usually having a very limited power. It's battery based devices, which is having a very small memory and processing capability, which is giving a specific need for an operating systems, which is can have a very small size from memory, RAM, and ROM, and also having a very efficient resource management algorithm. So the major problem and motivation behind this research, so if we're starting with in the past 10 years, just to understand what is the size of it, we have a huge increase on the number of IoT devices, which is increasing to 20% year to year, and the expectation to reach around 30 billion devices by 2025. All of this lead to that IoT systems are low reliable, lack of limitation and regulations. It's having a very low power consumption requirement and a small footprint. We have several operating systems now used to manage the IoT devices, but still none of these operating system can provide the full answer to the IoT device limitations. So about the related research, in 2018 there was some research done by Emmanuel regarding the RIoT, which is one of the major operating system for the low-end IoT, but his research was lacking one aspect, which is linked to the security about the operating system. In 2021, we have another research led by Seong, which is focusing on the IoT operating system reliability aspect, and his research come up that none of the existing operating system was focusing or having in mind the reliability aspect for the end user. In 2019, one of the most high-level researches, which is focusing on comparing all the existing operating system for the IoT at this time and showing what is the limitations and what is the requirement for each one. As shown in this table, this research was coming with more detail about each operating systems and what is the minimum requirement from the RAM and ROM and support and multi-threading for the CPU. And it was a very detailed research focusing on all type of the operating system at this time. For our research, we are using the hypothesis that the research will checking the possibility using of unified IoT operating system through analyze two things: analyzing the existing IoT operating system, which is coming from the previous research showing in 2019, and compare it also now with the existing IoT devices with its own limitation. In this research, we are using a pragmatism philosophy, and for this one, we are using the Sanders research onions, and for this one, we're having a deductive research map using experience and the previous research. Research analysis and outcome. So we're starting with a different IoT hardware available now. So we're having two types, which is a low-end IoT and high-end IoT. And it's obviously on the table here. For the low-end IoT, it's having a very low hardware capability, starting from the very limited RAM up to 2 kilobyte RAM and 32 kilobyte ROM, and processing is very small as having some requirement from very low power consumptions and medium security requirement, while compare this with the high-end IoT devices, we have a little bit bigger but still small RAM, which is 120 kilobyte, 1 megabit ROM, and we have 120 megahertz from processing speeds. Comparing this with the previous research about the requirement for each operating system and analysis this in details, it is very obvious which is coming that the RIoT is one of the operating system which is fitting all of this requirement based on the fact that it's having a light RAM and ROM requirement of 1.5 kilobyte and 5 kilobyte from RAM and ROM, low CPU requirement because it's supporting a multi-threading, and using a because it's using multi-threading and support different programming language like C and C++, which is having a very good advantage from the customization point of view, and it's allowing different IoT use cases. With more in-depth detail and research about this RIoT operating system security, so we do the analysis based on the known vulnerability for the RIoT systems, and it's obvious that there is a critical demand or critical problem in the IoT, and most of them is very critical, especially the DNS protocol one, which is this is one of the major security breach which is we have over the IoT for the past few years, and this can be compromise all the network where the IoT is, not only compromise the devices. So as a conclusion and future research, it's very obvious that most of the existing research focusing on IoT from a single point of view, none of them having more wider perspective, most of them missing security and reliability aspect. There is a lack of global standards of the IoT. Up to now, different standard, different operating system. So this is creating a huge gap on both security and reliability. Last but not least, unfortunately, based on the analysis, especially including the security aspect, none of the existing IoT covers these gaps, and none of them can be having a better reliability and security to have a common operating system for the IoT devices. Last but not least, the future research. For this one, the future research recommended is to focusing more on the IoT standards. So we have an IoT standardization, which is everyone follow. The impact of human sensitive use cases of the IoT, for example, the medical IoT, a new operating system design with a cybersecurity threat in mind. Finally, thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation. As I always said, cybersecurity, it is not limited to an IT. It's now expanded across different aspects. Thank you and meet you in the next presentation.